so much, friends. First of all, it's an unmitigated pleasure to be with all of you. And you at least thought of a very boring doctor to share with you on a case for ophthalmology. When we look back, very few of us were present on that midnight hour, but perhaps in the 74-year-old saga or the journey of this nation, optimism was the highest on the stroke of that midnight when this nation came into its own. But very seldom, very seldom things go as scripted. The hard-earned independence was, after all, a kind of very hasty process. At least 1 million lives lost, at least 10 million lives were kind of uprooted from the one side of the border to another, and a new country that came into its existence had a lot of worries to look after. Rehabilitating people, financial disturbance in the border, and everything put together, admittedly and understandably, probably healthcare was not highest in the list of priorities of this very worried, anxious new nation. And what happened? Do we ever spare a thought that what kind of healthcare, what kind of treatment did the people of this country, of the subcontinent, get in the era of the 1920s, 30s, 40s? The Indian healthcare for the common Indians can be summarized very effectively in one word, and that one word is nothing. There was literally no healthcare to talk about. The government medical hospitals that you see of today, be it in Kolkata, in Delhi, in Mumbai, in Chennai, of that era, they were very elitist institutions. They were the kind of fortress that was guarded by the colonial medical elites. And the people of our country found it extremely hard to penetrate the fortress, get any kind of treatment. And the people, the ordinary people, the middle class, the lower middle class, the struggling people of this country, whether you were in a city, whether you were in a village, whether you were in a suburban area, you were left with some kind of, botched up healthcare, a little bit of Ayurveda, a little bit of Unani, a little bit of folklore, a little bit of grandma's old therapy. And no wonder, on that fateful midnight of 1947, when this country came into being, an average Indian male was not expected to live for more than 46, 47 years. The average Indian woman in 1947 was not expected to see the light of the 40th decade. Being pregnant, childbirth, for an average Indian woman was a curse. It was a disease. Maternal mortality was perhaps unrecordable. Infant mortality was unthinkable. There were hardly a few thousand doctors who were coming out and mostly doing Jo Huzur and Jo Salam to our colonial overlords. That was the healthcare that this newborn independent country was born into. We had a tough time, ladies and gentlemen. And at the end of it, the kind of healthcare that evolved over the last 7 decades, by no means, it was not something that could be compared to being anywhere to be sort of standardized in the world. What came out was more out of default than intention. Somehow we cobbled together a little bit of government service, a little bit of private sector, and this bit of a hodgepodge between the government sector, between the private sector, everything put together, created a kind of unplanned hybrid entity that we call Indian healthcare today. The primary health, preventive health, sanitation, looking after the healthcare in the rural sector, that was the government's baby. And therapeutic healthcare came into the domain of the hospitals, partly government, partly private, at some kind of a 60-40 ratio, where 60% of the healthcare happened in the private domain and happened at a very high cost. For one private hospital to make its end meet, it would perhaps need to earn about 20,000 rupees per day, when the average income, a monthly income of an Indian, is hardly more than 10,000 rupees a month. So equate 20,000 rupees per day with 10,000 rupees per month, and the inequity that was there in Indian healthcare flashes in front of your eye. And no wonder, myself being a member of that fraternity of private healthcare, we live with the guilt that 60% of the hospital's bills which are produced ends up people into crashing indebtedness. Yes, we had a lot of problems. You're all familiar with the figures that the government funds healthcare very miserly, 10%, 1% of GDP, etc. Once again, it's nothing to write home about. So we had inadequate infrastructure. We had inefficient funding. But the people of this country refuses to accept defeat. So friends, after the struggle of 74 years in the domain of healthcare, mind you, today the average Indian almost lives into the 7th decade. How was it possible? It was possible because that girl on the dusty village road, the Asha healthcare worker, it was possible because that mother who, after looking after children and cooking 3 meals a day, would go out from a door-to-door survey as an Anganwadi worker. These were the workers, the people of the country, the lonely little doctor sitting in a primary health center. We doctors who were fighting it out in the hospitals, in the towns and cities with all your help. It was made possible. So this country, with so many worries in its mind and so many frontiers to look after, ran year after year the world's largest immunization program. From less than 1,500 doctors that would get into the medical colleges, we now have 80,000 doctors being produced every year. And how many of you are aware of the fact that 52% of those 80,000 doctors getting into medical schools are actually women? So for the first time, the gender ratio has been turned upside down. So we remain to be a specialty where men are in minority, at least at the intake level. But within brackets, there is a more serious aspect to this, because at the input level, we have 52% women. But when they come out of the other end of the production line, many of them, sadly, because of the very unfriendly social conditions, we have a large percentage of dropout compared to the women who get into the profession. So all this has been done. Can I share another secret with you? Flashes of brilliance within a desert. From the 1980s, with the onset of private healthcare and corporate hospitals in India, India became an oasis of tertiary healthcare expertise in cardiac surgery, critical care, neurosurgery, cancer surgery, most complex operations, transplantation. India was the only developing nation on the face of the earth which became a center of healthcare expertise. Brilliance. We are the only example in the 21st century whereby people from a higher GDP country actually travels, paying a life and a limb, to a lower GDP country to go to get medical treatment. It does not happen in any other technological domain. Jet engines were discovered 100 years back. Today, when you buy a passenger aircraft, when India buys a passenger aircraft, we beg and borrow to the likes of the Boeings and the Airbuses. When you buy a fighter aircraft, you are kind of scavenging the world, because we don't have our own. But when it comes to a heart transplant, a heart surgery, a critical care, and ECMO management, our doctors, our nurses, our healthcare workers have made cutting edge technology available in this country. It's a matter of pride, ladies and gentlemen. That is what the country has rewarded itself with. And it all started in the late 70s and the early 80s, when people who were trained, people who were technologically and knowledge empowered, made a huge sacrifice. Instead of queuing up for red cards, green cards, and blue cards, they stayed back in this country. They made a commitment in this country, and not only were they brilliant, but they went on to produce generations of people who would keep the flags flying. There is enough cause for optimism. But what does a doctor consider to be true optimism? True optimism is a vision and recognition of the mission which remains to be completed. It's not enough if I do an operation and plumb 3 or 4 bypass grafts on a patient. My mission is not completed till that gentleman goes back to the office, starts working and earning a bread for his family. So the optimism in front of you all today, especially the young of India, is realization of the fact that what is the work which is still in process? What is the work that remains to be done? Absolutely and surely, we need more clarity. We need more definition in the healthcare policy of India. There is still a lot of ambiguity. Health is a state subject. Part of it is decided by the center, and a lot of good intention falls between two stools. That should not happen. A lot of good intention needs to be backed by adequate resources. Of course, we are in realization of the fact when, because of the pre-pandemic and the post-pandemic situation, if the economy overall is struggling, it is difficult to create money out of nothing. We have to be patient. But once we have a deep-rooted social commitment has got to come to the funding of healthcare and education, because there is no way we are going to get something out of nothing. And how many times during the first wave, second wave of COVID have we seen our frailties, our deficiencies in terms of healthcare infrastructure has been laid bare in front of our eyes? We are producing more doctors, but we need to expand and substantiate our healthcare infrastructure far more. For 80,000 doctors, we have less than 20 lakh hospital beds. That is simply not enough. So we need to create more hospital infrastructure. And last but not the least, the most important thing is that India, being a nation that was founded on the principles of Ashoka, that was founded on the inspiration of Gautam Buddha. For so long, we have Ashoka's lion showing on our national stationery as a national emblem. We cannot forget the fact that healthcare has to be made available to all as a universal healthcare. It cannot be a commodity like the onion and the potato that you go out to shop, that you can buy and perhaps I cannot. That healthcare which is not brought within the reach of the last citizen of this country, mission is not fulfilled till that day reaching it. We are completely conscious of the fact that a lot of work is in progress and a lot of work remains to be done. But at the same time, every citizen of India, whether you are in healthcare, whether you are an outsider, be aware of the fact that health is not a doctor's agenda. Health is a people's agenda. Health is an agenda that is shared by every member of the family, by every member of the society. A doctor is merely a little nut and bolt in the system who helps the system to run. So I'm sure that we may not be there to see that sunrise. We may not be there to see that day dawn upon us, but that day is coming, that along with our brilliance, along with our expertise, along with our acclaimed flashes of absolute technical achievement for which we are recognized the world over, India will not only be a healthcare destination, but India will have the ability to give healthcare irrespective of their financial status to each and every Indian. And once again, I repeat, it is not the agenda of the politician. It is not the agenda of the doctors. It is not the agenda of any healthcare worker. It is the agenda, it is the dream, it is the aspiration of the country as a whole. And it is with that optimism that we live in that hope. Tagore used to say many a times, and how can a Bengali end speaking without mentioning Tagore even once? And we just say and submit that in the festival of lights of this country, my father, I light a little lamp. Thank you.